Hi, I'm David Holm, and we would like to welcome you today to Family Talks. Family Talks is a weekly conversation with pastors and church leaders throughout our West Virginia Baptist Convention family to learn what's going on in their churches and ministries, and not just to learn information, but to find out how we might partner with one another as we do ministry together. So today I'd like to welcome Rich Blain. Rich is the lead pastor at South Parkersburg Baptist Church. Rich is also the chair of the Outreach Commission of the West Virginia Baptist Convention. So, Rich, we welcome you today.
Oh, thank you, David. Honored that you have me. So,
back in February, you and I had a conversation about the fact that you and your staff had just come away from a time of visioning for your church, and just thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about today about how you go about that, the importance of having a vision for your church, and what all is involved. So it's all yours.
Yeah, I'll try not to take too much time on this one thing, but it was really interesting how this came about because I was on staff for a few years prior to becoming lead pastor, and so my first year I started in 2018. We wanted to focus a lot of time on relationships. Just within the church and to get to know one another and building that relational equity. And so we did that. And late that first summer, I went to Parchment Valley. I was going to stay 3 or 4 nights because I'm blessed our church affords me some time to get away and think and plan. And so I went with calendars in hand, and I'm like, man, I'm going to map out the sermons for the next 6-8 months. What are we going to do discipleship wise and Bible studies? And so I got to Parchment Valley and I had my calendars out. It was a beautiful day. I was sitting out on one of the decks on the back of the lodge. And so I sat there and and nothing was coming to me. And my mind kept going other places. And so I wrestled with that. But my mind kept going to what ended up being some vision thoughts. And I just kept thinking about the concept of kingdom. And so anyway, that first evening, I sat there like 2 hours and I looked down, I had all my colored pens. I was going to be all organized. And after 2 hours, I hadn't written anything down in regard to what I thought. So anyway, later that night, I called a friend of mine, actually a pastor mentor. And he was like, Rich, you better pay attention. God's trying to tell you something. So the next 2 days, I had those big Post-it sheets, you can stick on a wall. And so I was writing scriptures down and thoughts and different things that were coming to me. And what ended up birthing out of that was actually start of a vision casting. So we met as a staff like a month later, and spent a couple of days together and just went through a lot of what I was thinking. And that was in the fall. Well, had an idea that the vision was centered around kingdom and the concept of the kingdom of God, but didn't know specifics. So what we did was when we entered the next year in January, I spent 6 or 8 weeks just really preaching and teaching on the theology of kingdom and the scriptures behind that, and just kind of started laying that theological groundwork, I guess, if you will. Then we went into a period of 6 weeks where we just, as a church-wide, spent time in prayer. And I challenged them with this question, and we handed out little slips of paper each week so folks could write stuff down. In their own quiet time and in their prayer time, what is God impressing on them that our church would look like for the next 3, 5, 7 years? And so people submitted these thoughts. Well, we generated a vision team. And after the first couple of weeks, we started meeting and praying over these responses and discerning that together as a vision team. And then right around Easter, we had it came packaged really nicely. God just made it very clear for us. And so that Easter, we kind of unveiled our vision, and our statement that kind of the hub that turns everything for us is that we believe we are a people who, sometimes we can think of church as a place or a building, and it's really the people. So we are a people who pursue and proclaim the kingdom of God and participate in what God is doing in the world. So it's really a beautiful thing. And this whole process, I've never experienced anything like this. And when that started coming to my mind, and then people were responding, because I think I received some great advice from some mentors and guys who've been there. And I think sometimes as pastors, there's a tendency to want to come in and say, this is our vision, and we all need to buy in and get on board with it. And I know that's done, but felt really strongly we needed some ownership from the church and some buy-in and some input, and for them to think and pray and to be able to share that. And so what came out of it was just beautiful. It was a really, really neat experience. And so that's kind of been driving us, because I think for a while as a church, we were kind of flying visionless, and I think vision is so important, because it's not how we think we should do church. It's what does God have in store for us? What do we foresee God doing in and through us in the future? And so yeah, that was how we went through it. And then once Easter hit, we just kind of unveiled it. But then we spent several weeks kind of teaching what does it mean to pursue the kingdom? What does it mean to proclaim kingdom? And what does it mean to participate? And then we started fleshing out some tangible things of what specifically does that look like for us in our context. And one of the things that very next fall that really, you mentioned ministry partnerships in the intro, and one of the things that birthed from this vision was we feel like we can participate in what God's doing in the world more effectively if we work together and if we partner with organizations in the community, other churches, schools, all these things. And so we just started praying that as a staff that God would bring something to us. And in the fall of this past fall, we launched a ministry partnership with Franklin Elementary School. And the response to the folks to financially but also physically and serving was really, really pretty phenomenal to see God working in and through that. So I just think, we, as humans, we can be very habit driven, and we can just continue, just get in a routine. And I think we can even do that as churches. But when God gives you a vision and he unveils that, it creates some energy and excitement, and it helps us to keep our focus on that instead of even maybe ourselves, so.
Well, I like what you said. It's not that God could not just wake you up one morning and say, okay, here's the vision, and you go with it. But it is a process that you go through, and it involves a lot of prayer. And I like the idea of you bringing other people in to have ownership of it. And I think that's important as well. And then you mentioned the tangible things. If your vision is just a statement you write on the wall, then really it's no good. But those tangible aspects of that vision and seeing it come to life and produce fruit is incredible. But I also know that this year has been a rather odd year. And you want to think that in your vision, you have it all planned out, but sometimes there are things like pandemics that come along. But did that cause you to have to pivot or anything in your vision, or did it all work right in?
That's an interesting question. I think as probably for most people, not having any idea this is coming, there was a lot of time of reaction, how are we going to respond to this? And, just the immediate front end of coordinating logistics and communication and all those things. But what's really been interesting as once all this started, it wasn't very long where we were, as a staff, we were together and we were just like, man, what a better time. Is there a better time to really have to keep a focus on what your vision is as a church than when something like this unexpected happens? And actually, I obviously all the praise goes to God, but unveiling this vision and casting it and starting to make strides toward it, I think has been really crucial for us through this pandemic, because we've been intentional about trying to keep the vision at the forefront. And even though we may not be able to do things as we normally do, we can still pursue kingdom. We can still proclaim kingdom. We can still participate. And the way our church has responded, and I've talked to other pastors, we've been in on some of those Zoom sessions, and it's just so encouraging to hear how, as churches, as followers of Christ, people are responding and participating in these opportunities to serve others. And, the generosity with time and resources that our churches, people in our church have shown has just been a real blessing. And I think I firmly believe that a lot of it has to do with the fact of having a vision. And so I guess, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but it was somewhat of a pivot, I guess, but it wasn't away from the vision. It was maybe a pivot in how can we be kingdom agents differently in the midst of a global crisis.
That's good. I know we've had this conversation as well, and you've had a really good online presence. Well, you've always had an online presence, but especially during the time where you weren't meeting together as a church, that you had a very good presence. And it wasn't just something that you were doing just to do, but that online presence fit into a vision as well. And I want you to tell us a little bit about your vision for your online presence and what God's doing with that.
Yeah. It's really interesting, David. I mean, you've had those instances, I'm sure, where, things happen and you look back and you think, well, you can't make this up. You just see God's hand at work. And we entered, our online presence was okay for a while, but it was just kind of something we were just doing because we know a lot of people are online. But we wanted to be more intentional about redesigning our website, making it more user-friendly, making it more of a resource for people to go and get information, to find links to messages and studies and whatnot. And so this past fall, during our budget planning, we felt really strongly that we needed help there. And I'm not good at that stuff. And, as a staff, we all had plenty to do, as I know you're aware of with other pastors and your experience in ministry. So we actually budgeted to create a part-time communications director position. And so we hired a lady at the first of the year. She started, and she's immediately revamping the website and doing all this work. And then COVID hits. And so now we have this, I think, really, really awesome website for people to go to, and she continues to tweak that. And that's just, that is, to me, is just a God timing thing, because there's no way we would have known this was coming. But to have her in place and also working with the rest of the staff and what we want that to look like and how we could use it and other people could use it, it's been amazing. We have talked a lot in the past for a few years about live stream capability. We record our messages and people who can't see it, they could listen to it. We burn it onto a CD and things like that, which was fine. but, we never really gained much traction as far as live streaming. But COVID kind of forced us into it. And when we first started, we were recording the messages. And then, as you know, it takes some editing and some work. And Ann, our communications director, was in one evening when the praise team was practicing, and she just started filming with her camera and streamed it, for folks just as a kind of a little shot in the arm and a little bit of worship in the middle of the week, and for folks to listen. And that just kind of led to, well, let's do this, let's go for it. And there's still some equipment and things that we need to get to make it better and more user friendly. But the response to it's been amazing. And I just think it's really just a praise to God that he's enabled us with people talented and knowledgeable with technology. If it was up to me, I'd have to mail you a copy of my manuscript. We wouldn't be able to do much of this tech stuff, but no. And so with that, now we have this vision of everything we're doing going forward is, we will still communicate other ways, but one of our goals is to really funnel people to our website, because everything they need is going to be there. Links to, like I said, messages. Adam Poff, one of our associates, has been doing a Bible study on Facebook Live. Is that what they call it? Anyway, see, I can't even get the right terms. Through Facebook. And the response, we're having a few hundred people view this Bible study, when before COVID, we would have an evening Bible study and maybe have 20, 25 people. So it's just this opportunity to reach more folks. And I've told our staff, when we come out on the other side of this and things get back to whatever normal, is, if we don't have a camera or a phone hooked up recording these studies and streaming them out for folks to see, then we're missing the boat, because I just think it's just opened the door to reach more folks and give people more access.
Well, certainly. You want what you're putting out online to be something that's quality and that people would watch and learn from and all of that. But it also, if you're going to drive them to your website, then certainly you want your website to be something that when they get there, they're going to be able to easily find what they're looking for. And so they really work together. You can have a really good online presence, but if you've got a bad website, then you're sort of defeating the purpose. So that's a good point to have.
Yeah, she just added something recently. She sent it to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And it's actually like a condensed transcript of the sermon. Mm-hmm. And she's putting it out on a website so folks can even go to that link and just kind of read through what were the main points in the scriptures, and then maybe that sounds intriguing, maybe I'll go watch it. So it's just, but yeah, you're right, they go hand in hand. And when I was younger in college in speech class, the emphasis was on verbally communicating clearly and articulately, and that's still important. But now online and social media is another method of communication, and we want that to be clear and articulate as well. So the website and being able to navigate that is huge.
Sure. And I've talked to pastors during this time, and they said, well, we don't have some of the equipment, or we don't have some of the knowledgeable people that some of the other churches have. And so I've asked them, I said, well, do you have teenagers in your church? And they'll go, well, yes. And I'm like, man, they're your technical people right there, because that's what they live on. And so you can find people to help you do this and do it well if you look within your church. I think God provides those avenues and those resources for us.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that, because you're dead on. These young people, it's like some of them were born with a phone in their hand, it seems like, and remember when I was teaching, if I had a problem with my phone, when I was teaching high school, I just hand it to one of the kids and they'd take it, and 5 seconds later it was fixed. And I don't have any idea how they did it. But but yeah, and that's something else that we're looking at is this online presence has really created a new front door. And you have people tuning in for your services or whatever, your studies, that have never entered your church. And so what we're trying to work through now is, and I think incorporating some young people will help with this, is how can we communicate with those folks? How can we connect through social media, through email, whatever it is, to be a welcoming presence, even though it's not physically. And so that's something we're trying to read up on and study on, and how can we most effectively do that.
Good. Well, Rich, I really enjoyed our time together, and I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and to share with your family and the West Virginia Baptist Convention what's going on with you. And I would hope that if folks have questions, that they could find you on your website, or some way to maybe drop you an email or a text and just get some more information, or maybe some additional insight on some of these things, if that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely. I'll help any way I can. I'm not an expert in any way on this, but I think that's one thing I so appreciate our convention in being so intentional in trying to network churches. And it's really interesting in our outreach commission, you mentioned, we're looking at partnering churches, planting churches, and I appreciate what you've done with our Zoom meetings with different pastors throughout the state and sharing ideas. And so if anybody ever had any questions or thoughts, or even listen to this and think, hey, I got an idea, you might want to give this a try, we're open to consider all that and want to help any way we can. So email me, give us a call here at the church office, 304-422-7722 is our number here. Or you can go on the website, and our email addresses, all our contact info is there. So I thank you, David, for this time and this opportunity to share, and thanks for all you're doing, all you've done for me personally, being a pastor, and what you're doing throughout the state to help churches.
Thank
you.
Awesome. Well, West Virginia Baptist Convention family, doing Christ's work together. That's what we're about. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope that you'll join us next week for Family Talks.
Thank you all.